On behalf of every adult in modern America who has been made to feel guilty about your process in life toward approaching relationships. You know how they act like once you get to be, like 25 and then you get to 30 and you get to 35 and whatever else. And there's this attitude about like, well, why aren't you married? And why aren't you having this? And why aren't you having a successful relationship? And why are there so many divorces? Well, to be honest, the reason why I personally think is because we are still in servitude to an idealized image of how a relationship is supposed to be organized and how a home life is supposed to function, instead of us simply designing our lives around what is going to allow ourselves and those connected to us to best thrive. Modern relationships are definitely different from the traditional, but in some ways I think that previous generations were also under what I believe were unrealistic expectations given their paths in life and their goals and their values and whatnot. I think other people were also forced into that idealized bubble, in the 30s, 40s, and 50s and whatnot. And this is a generation and age of redefining, where people are redefining what it means to, to be an adult, to what does it mean to be successful? How do you measure that? What does it mean to be in a relationship and a marriage as well? Because we all know that, like, what was it like in the 1940s and 50s and everything else? It was always a man and a woman with their 2 kids, 3 kids in the household. That was considered the proper marriage. If you were dating, there were proper rules for that. There were rules for this, there were rules for that. But the thing about rules is they don't work for everybody. Not everybody is going to have the exact same type of life, type of existence. And so with that being said, you've got to redefine what a proper marriage is for you and yours. In this age of redefining, what we're doing is we are reforming the way that we live our lives, the way that we do business, the way that we approach education and everything else on a much more realistic foundation. So instead of trying to like mold and shape ourselves in order to meet traditions or rules or regulations, we're starting to look at reshaping the traditions and the ways that we live our lives according to what's healthy. And see, that, that's the revolution right there. That's the whole revolution. It's taking the society's structure and reshaping it for what's healthy for an individual. So in other words, like, allowing us more freedom in how we choose to live our lives, how we choose to shape our marriages and relationships, how we choose to approach parenting and whatnot, doing it in a way that's more holistically healthy for everybody involved in it. So when it comes to things like relationships and marriage, some of the things, that we typically do might not be necessary or might not even be best. So in some situations, for example, the couple might not even live together. Like, they might actually maintain separate housing, but they're committed to each other. They spend time together on a regular basis. But if the two of them need to be apart in that way in order for them to be, happy and comfortable, that should be okay. I knew a couple, when I was in my undergrad, where one of my favorite professors mentioned she and her husband lived in different cities. And at the time, in that state of mind, I was still under that entrapment of the slavery to the idealized image. You're supposed to be living in this, not only the same city, but the same house. But she explained that for both of their careers and where they were in life, it was necessary. And they saw each other, very frequently, just not, in the frequency of like living together would have allowed. But they were okay with it, and their marriage is still going strong, and it's a successful partnership. Other things is like, the family structure of, the parents go to work and then they come home and then they cook and clean and go to sleep. Sometimes that doesn't work. Some people like to do different things, to have a different type of schedule. Maybe, they're like, me, for example, like, I like to go out, like, to coffee shops. I spend a lot of my time outside of the house, bookstores, parks, coffee shops, and whatnot. I'm not going to be home that much, and so I also like to go boxing. I'm wearing like my boxing shirt right here. It's, you have to be allowed to have that time. And sometimes you'll be with the person that you're with, and sometimes you'll be solo and be alone. And that's acceptable. That's okay. You have to choose how you're going to organize your home life, how you're going to organize your relationships based on what's best for the thriving of all people involved in the situation. So that's what I mean about redefining relationships. And I think a lot of us, we try to create this idealized image of a relationship, and it ends up causing friction because you think that, the man and the woman are, if it's, and that's another thing, it's not just heterosexual relationships anymore. We've got to embrace the fact that people are having different types of relationships, and to allow for that and to allow it to be successful. And also just, in general, whether you're gay or straight, that previous dynamic of how a relationship is supposed to function, how the male and the female are supposed to act, that obviously isn't going to work inside of a homosexual relationship. But I feel like even in a heterosexual partnership, that idealized image of the man's got to act this way, the woman's got to act this way, you guys have to spend this kind of time together, you have to do this together, you have to blah, blah, blah. It's too much crap, y'all, for real. Like, you have to organize and get to know each other for who you are. What are your strengths? How do you like to move? How do you like to exist? And allow each other that freedom and that space, because that is what I mean about escaping that idealized image of, what I said in the title, the Little House on the Prairie syndrome or the fairy tale syndrome. You've got to break out of that, and you've got to accept each other's moods and tendencies and whatever else, because it's not a happily ever after. That's not how that works. Life has challenges. You have to expect them, and you have to keep rolling with them. You have to adapt, and you just got to go ahead and just be comfortable not being a formula. You have to get comfortable with that. You have to just find your way together, and it's not something that happens overnight. People have to grow to connect. They have to grow to adapt and become comfortable with each other in their presence. That's an important factor for relationships and with friendships as well. And like everything, the more time that passes, the more comfortable things start to flow and fit together, and you have to allow space for that. So that's what I mean about redefining marriages, relationships, and how we function. And, in a future video, I'm going to talk about how we need to do the same thing, redefining our workplaces, redefining how we look at work-life balance as well, because it extends to that as well. But that will be in the next video, the next discussion. Peace.